Welcome back to the podcast. I have Lindsay here with us. Lindsay is the founder of the Meditation Mama Company and host of the new podcast. She's a mama of 3 amazing littles. Her work revolves around her 2 greatest passions, meditation and parenting the new earth children. Her meditations are channel transmissions that shift your frequency and elevate your consciousness to the 5D and beyond. I am so excited to talk to you today and get into it. Your first podcast, I was receiving all those information and codes, but you're definitely activating the Starseed child within myself, as well as potentially thinking about these things for my future children. So I just want to say thank you so much for that.
I love that so much. Thank you so much, Stormy. I'm so excited to be here. And yes, that's my exact intention with this, is that it's not just for parents, but parents to be, and also for all starseeds, just to feel that sense of just community, I guess, and safety.
Yeah, community is so important. I guess I would say the majority of people that listen to my podcast are like awake and aware, but what would you say, just to give us a foundation of like what a starseed means to you, how you like qualify or what makes you a starseed, and how do you, and people can listen to that first episode, but just a little bit, just to give us a foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. So to me, a starseed is someone that's just lived the majority of their lives interdimensionally, galactically, on higher planes than they have on Earth. And there are certainly a lot of starseeds too that are more and more coming in that are brand new to Earth, or have just lived like a handful of lives here. Like one of my kids, I feel that very much with her. But that's how I look at the definition of starseed. I know it's kind of like a term that's thrown around a lot, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, it is kind of thrown around. I think it's great because people are more open to like thinking about alternative things. And it also speaks, I think, like when I first had discovered it, I was like, it had so much resonance. Because there's so many different definitions, but there was so much resonance that when I first had like started to realize what a starseed meant and if I was one, it was like the first time I really felt like heard and like seen and being like, oh my God, this is me. Like, this is why I've had and felt all these things. And you do a really phenomenal job with that first episode, like 12 different signs that really can reach out to like and touch on those points. Not that you need all 12 of them, but like just there's some that are particular that just resonated so deeply. Were you, I don't know this about you, were you already like awakened to the fact that you were a starseed before your kids, or did your kids start your awakening? Were they the catalyst?
No. Yeah, I was just talking about this with somebody. My awakening was, they're always in layers, right? But I had a very slow trickle the year before my first was born, where my aunt came to me in my dreams, and my intuition was kind of like opening back up again after being shut down for so many years. And I was starting to maybe like sense some things happening like energetically. But my awakening really took off when, each of my kids was born, and each child activated me in a completely different way. Like that second one in 2020, that was when everything like really exploded for me. And then my third one was just next level. I had a full on Kundalini awakening after she was born. And
Oh my God.
it was wild. All of my clairaudience came back online, and like I was, it was next level. So each of them awakened me in a different way. And I think if that had all happened like with the first one, it would have been too much. So it was like, a soft awakening with the first one. The second one was like my real awakening with 2020. And then the third one was just like the explosion.
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine having a Kundalini awakening after your birth, or was it like during your birth? What even, can we just go into that a little bit?
I'm trying to remember exactly when it happened. I want to say it happened within the month after she was born. So like she was in the room with me in her little bassinet, and just every night I'd be like, what is going on? Like my whole body was vibrating. And I remember I'd go downstairs. I'm like, am I going crazy? Like I would go downstairs. Is there a fan on, like a ceiling fan that's like affecting the floor? I would look under my bed. I was like, what the hell is going on? And every time I laid down, it was just like the Kundalini rising. And
Oh my
That
God.
was wild. It was like all of my energy centers and all of my chakras, I think they were just like activating and upgrading basically after her arrival.
Wow. That sounds
Yeah.
incredible. And also, yeah, lots of
Mm.
energy. I'm like getting just chills like thinking about it. Okay. So having that, so you're like slowly awakening, each kid is like starting to like awaken this inside of you. And then at what point, and like, does this keep happening to you? Because I was wondering, as I was listening to this episode, it's like so easy. And this even happens when we're like thinking about like health stuff or career. Like you have all of these like very ingrained like beliefs and like ways of like how you were raised, ways how like the earth it operates and how other people do things and stuff. And sometimes it takes so much energy to like override those things and say like, no, I believe it this way. This is how the world works. This is my new belief. This is my new way of doing things. Has it been difficult like adjusting to how you parent like all of your kids in different levels of like, no, I'm doing things differently instead of like going through like the traditional like parenting advice? Or was it always just kind of easy of like, no, my kids they don't work that way. It's this. Has there ever been resistance with you as you like have uncovered this process?
Yeah, I think that was the biggest learning with Hudson, my first child. And that was like what I call my soft awakening because that was the year of like diving into shadow work and self inquiry and
Mm-hmm.
self discovery because I became so disconnected from my intuition at that point. When I had him, I was like constantly on Google, constantly outsourcing answer. I was trying to follow this schedule that somebody had given me, and I was like, why isn't he following it? And I was getting so frustrated. And I was in full on like postpartum anxiety too. So that was part of it. And then by like month 4 or 5, I was finally pulling myself out of it because I was reconnecting to my intuition. I was realizing, okay, my child is different than a lot of these babies, and I just have to go with whatever I feel like he needs. Like, I'm the mom, and he chose me. I'm just going to listen to my intuition and feel it out versus constantly outsourcing. So, yeah. And then I feel like that year too, I had so many stories, like, so deeply ingrained me from my own mother that I was sort of like peeling back. Like I had this story that motherhood is all sacrifice. And I was like, I'm not working this year. This is my job now. I'm going to be the best mom. I'm going to do everything. My husband doesn't even have to do anything. Like this is my job now. And I completely burnt myself out. I had autoimmune disorder. I had ulcerative colitis by the end of the year because I was just, again, like outsourcing my power and just so stuck in like the conditioning and the stories. So at the end of that year, I was like, okay, we've got to make changes here, Lindsay. And that was really the beginning of, I guess, like my real spiritual awakening. Like I said, the shadow work and the self discovery and just peeling back. What have I learned from society and my parents and what has to go? And I would say that's definitely an ongoing journey. But now at this stage, I think with each child, it's gotten easier where I'm just like, no, I'm good. Like I'm so connected to my kids and I'm so connected to like my intuition that I can always figure it out on my own for the most part.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that definitely resonates because it's like, of course, as you follow like your own intuition and your own inner voice and you're like listening to yourself first and listening to your kids outside of the noise, it gets easier that way. But it's like it's so difficult to get to that spot sometimes. Like, was there any like tangible things of like, I don't know, like three different things where you're like, okay, I know you mentioned shadow work, so like getting into your older beliefs and getting those things out, but was there any other like tools that like was like so helpful for you to kind of reshift those, or was it just that like, or was it just a natural unraveling when you like went down that road?
With my first, it was like journaling. I made it a
Okay.
point to try to journal like every single day. And then I also started incorporating again like a gratitude practice because I realized I had really kind of shifted away from that and I'd gotten to this like victim mode of, oh, poor me about so many things. And so it was like shadow work and gratitude practice, journaling. And then as I had more
Yeah.
children, I got into energy healing. I mean, that is,
Right.
like life
Right.
changing, learning energy healing practices. And then obviously meditation is huge for me. But yeah, it wasn't all these things at once. It was like I was just kind of figuring it out piece by piece.
That makes total sense. And okay, so you're having these awakenings and you said something about like your mom and how like you had to kind of unravel that kind of like their parenting style. When you started doing things differently, did people start to understand outside? Like even, I mean, there was a few things I'd want to unpack because I think a lot of moms that I personally talk to also say like, yeah, I'm supposed to do everything. I'm like the superhero, like I've got it all. And it really burns everyone out, including like you and everybody else around you. Was there like a harder shift to like reshift that? Or like, how did you go from like doing that and then be like, okay, after shifting when you had like your autoimmune disease and things, how did you start branching out, like asking for help and doing things differently? Did your mom understand or yeah, what was that?
Yeah, well, our family, we've never lived by our family,
Okay.
so I don't know what that's like to have family around with kids. And part of it for me was we were brand new to the city, so I didn't really have a community here, which is really tough. Like, I would say my number one piece of advice for any mom, but like especially new moms, is find your community and find your people that you can bounce things off of and that you resonate with. I like joined Facebook so that I could join some mom groups and try to meet my people. And I started taking Hudson to like mommy and me classes, just like trying to find my people. And I found this like amazing soul sister. It was like instant connection. And she and I parented very much the same. So that was like such a sense of comfort for me. But yeah, I mean, I think community is huge. And then just you have to really just find that like confidence in yourself and not listen to the noise. Because
Yeah.
certain people in my family, like when I would go home to visit, were like, oh, you're too soft with him, or you're too this or that. And I just had to like hold my frequency and be like, nope, this is how we do it and this is what's best for my child.
Mm,
So it took a while, I think
yeah.
it's the first year of motherhood is truly, it's an initiation, and it was one of the most transformative years of my life. Like, I remember going to on a trip a few months after my son was born, and I was like, I'm going to be so ready for some girl time and I can't wait to see my old friends, and none of them had kids yet. And that trip, I left after 24 hours. I was like, whoa, I'm a completely different person. I have shifted so much, and it happened like that. Like, we just didn't really resonate anymore. So I think just knowing that going in would be helpful for new moms, because for me, I had no idea that it was going to go down that way.
Wow. I never
Hmm.
thought about like motherhood being an initiation. That if you were to go into that ahead of time and know that like exactly, because I think there's some degree where you're like, yeah, I'm not going to be the same. Like I'm going to have this human, I'm going to be a mom, and it's like not that it's downplayed, but just the fact that just that phrase of that this is an initiation that you're going through and you will not be the same coming out the other end, I think is like really reassuring and kind of validating, I would assume, being on the other side and be like, yeah, this isn't me anymore. So that's like, I haven't heard of like birth and motherhood being in that like phrase. So I absolutely like, I love that term because it feels so like that's exactly what I would imagine it would be like. So I really appreciate that. So, when you're, because I now where I see, we look at the past and see where we're at now to know like, okay, this is where we're going. So the previous generations hasn't really been awake and aware to a lot of us to like starseeds and living different and, listening to our intuition. And now as like our generation of this wave kind of coming up and know, okay, I'm a starseed one. Parents are shifting. They're kind of knowing that they're different and living their life different. When you see like this new wave of your kids, okay, now the starseeds are having starseeds. So it's like, how do you see this like going forward? Like, do you feel like they're even more alien and turned on than that you were as a kid? And yeah, we'll just start at that question and then I have some follow up.
Yeah. No, 1,000%. So I know, I'm going to be honest, I don't really remember my childhood that much before age like 6. For whatever reason, I've kind of blocked it out, but I've gathered in pieces that I was very connected to the other side and my parents shut it down. It scared them so much. So, yeah, I think a lot of us were tapped in when we were younger, and these kids are definitely super tapped in. but I feel like they're also even wiser and maybe even older souls than some of us are. I feel like they are so high frequency, and not to say that our like generation wasn't, but I feel like a lot of us came in to be these like ancestral healers for our lineages. I know like you and I have talked about that. And
Oh,
it feels
yeah.
like these Starseed kids, I don't think most of them are coming in for that. I think they're coming in and
Mhm.
they're like, we are so high frequency and we're coming into a conscious family and we're just gonna like do our thing. And one thing I've noticed is I remember for me, I was always like, I know I'm here to do something that feels big, but like, what is it? And it took me so long to figure it out. I feel like these kids that are coming in, they're like, I'm here and I know what I want to do. And I'm like ready to go because I already see a lot of it with my kids and they're only 6, 4, and 2.
Yeah.
But also I want to touch on, I think one of the main differences with parenting is when I was a kid, it was very authoritative for a lot of us. It was very much like, I'm the parent, I'm the leader, you do as I say, you follow my lead. And I remember hearing so often, I'd say, well, why do we have to do it this way? And they'd be like, because I said so. And
Yeah.
there was no talk. I mean, I would talk back, but it didn't get me anywhere. And I feel like with our kids now, these kids, it's meant to be more of like a co-creative experience where they are teaching us maybe more so than we're teaching them. And we're just kind of helping guide and shape their experience. But it's really more of this like co-creation. And my kids are very much like telling me what they need. Like, I'm gonna do a whole episode on starseeds in school. Like my son, he very much telling me that public school was not resonant for him. And now my kids, as of recently, I'm like, man, I really wish we lived by the water. Like I miss being by the beach. And my kids started randomly bringing it up. And I'm like, they're telling us what they need. So we're gonna listen. Oh, it's a
Yeah.
co-creation.
Yeah. Yeah. That, yeah, exactly that. It's a co-creation. And it's like, yeah, I think in that past thought is like, because I'm older and you're younger, that I know more than you and I know what's right for you. And it's like a whole different aspect where you have new leaders that are coming up that like, okay, just because one might be younger doesn't mean that they know any less or different, but like actually they might know more, a completely different level of awareness. And I really resonated with like Hudson's, what you were talking about in the podcast with your oldest, of like that inner knowing, always questioning, being able to zoom out. And I was like, absolutely, that was like me as a kid. And I was just talking to my mom about this because we were like, like she was at the time like just asleep, survival mode, young mom back in the day, not being able to Google anything. And we talk about what the differences would be, to be like how you would be different or like how the kids would be different if you were able to actually like encourage your gifts or encourage what you were really good at, or not like go that kind of reroute of like, oh, this is how to keep you safe, this is how to make money, this is the smart things, and actually like nurture those like quirky things about you. And so I reflect that to my experience to be like, okay, where would I be compared to having to reprogram and redo all my thoughts and beliefs? I guess, do you think that for your kids, because I mean you're consciously really raising them, but because they're so different and so matter of fact, do you think even if you were not so awake yourself, your kids would be like, oh no, this is what I'm doing, I'm not like listening to any of that? Or do you think there's a level of like, they still need that nurturing? You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I mean, I feel like I'm thinking my oldest and my youngest are, they would be considered like bossy. I think they
Yeah.
would do that. And then, if I tried to parent the old way, we'd probably just be butting heads all the time. My
Okay.
middle
Yeah.
is like such a super empath, super intuitive that I think she would end up being like a people pleaser.
Gotcha. Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, it would be like all these shadow aspects of what I don't want for them.
And then you parenting them, knowing that they're star seeds, it's like you're able to kind of remove that whole layer that like they can just kind of skip. And I just can't imagine, like, it's very exciting to think like what they'd be able to do so quickly, or younger, to be like, no, this is my mission, these are my skills. And that's like what I get out of your podcast and what I'm so excited about, like what you're able to share. Because if we're able to like raising kids this way and re-raising ourselves this way, that's how like the new earth can form. And yeah, so just kind of, I love you to like rant about just like the new earth and parenting and just kind of what you dream up of what you wish like parents could do for their kids right now.
I think one of the biggest things that's coming to mind when you're talking about that is just that we're not meant to be good at everything. You know, we come in with these very amazing special gifts, and we come in, especially these kids, with big missions. And of course, teach them, let them dabble in things and let them try different things and different subjects and music, art, sports, whatever, and see what they gravitate towards. But I think it's really important that we help hone in and like start specializing. So, like, my oldest Hudson, he's a Life Path 22. He's quite literally obsessed with building things as well. Like 22 is the master builder number, but he's also, ever since he was, I want to say like 8 months old, he's so good with his fingers and he would just tinker around and put things together. So we are like every STEM kit, getting him like little robotics kits, all the magnet tiles and all the things that can help him just like really nourish that part of his brain because he's naturally so good at it. So I can see him doing something or maybe something with technology one day. But I think just like recognizing these gifts and then how can you nourish those to the best of your ability? Because I don't know, do we think these kids are going to go to college one day? Like college may be obsolete at that point. It's already kind of, a lot of people are shifting away from it. So maybe they can specialize in like high school and come out doing some incredible thing for the earth. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds, but I just think we need to really think outside the box and like let go of this is how your life goes, which I feel like our generation is doing that. Some of us, not all of us.
Yeah, totally. Because it is like this reshifting of like, and it could be and is, because I know personally this has been very triggering for other people, the way that like I decided to live my life or questions I had. And it's like kind of just really just taking it apart to be like, well, why do we have to do things like that? Why can't we just go this direction or do this way or reshift the parenting and things like that. So for parenting is, you had mentioned, you're married and you have a husband and you co-parent with the kids, and I imagine you're co-parenting with your husband too. How is it working with the two, or like the unit of that co-creation? Have you guys been like on the same page with the way that you're doing things? Have you had any friction with that? Because I know especially being females, like the feminine sometimes more awake than the masculine. Like, how is that dynamic working? And have you, tell me about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I caught on quite a bit earlier that our kids were different than he did. And I mean, he's got his own conditioning and his own stories from his family as well. And it runs deep. And so that's something he's had to work through also. But I think at this point, we're like almost 7 years in, we're really cohesive in the way we do things. We still have occasional like disagreements here and there, but we're really good about like being a team on everything. But yeah, in the beginning, we would butt heads where he'd be like, this is ridiculous. Why is he so upset? He just needs to let it go. And I'm like, no, let him feel his feelings and his emotions, and he needs to move through it. And da-da-da. So yeah, it took a while to like get to that point. I would say so Hudson and Kenzie are 2.5 years apart. So I would say by the second child, then everything like really clicked for him. But yeah, it took a while. And also, when you have more than one kid, the first kid, it's like the mom can kind of take on more responsibility. It's really not a big deal. But like when you have a second kid, you really have to divide and conquer. So They got to step up. They don't really have a choice.
You're like, I need help with this. We have another human now.
And by the third, the first child is just like raising the third, basically. Hudson's like my little right hand. Gosh. Yeah, he's the best.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's great. Yeah, that's sometimes that I hear that too, where you like one's taking the lead and you're kind of more open and aware to things. So it sounds like just like time and just learning the process, he kind of just opened up as when you stuck to your intuition in the way that you wanted to do things. And then he just kind of was like, okay, we're on board with it now, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think for him too, my husband's very like left brained.
Yeah.
So it was also sending him like articles. Like there's so many fantastic like Instagram accounts and different people. Like there's this one called Big Little Feelings that is like, everyone knows. I love that one. So I would just like send him little things like, hey, it's not just me where this is coming from. Like this is what's working for other people too, who are kind kind of following this, I guess at the time it was called like more gentle parenting. Now I feel like I call it now like intuitive parenting. But yeah, I think just sending him
Yeah.
research that's not just coming from me. Like, hey, I'm not just trying to boss you around. This is, what the experts are saying too.
Yeah, that's smart. And it's like the way that like the masculine or our own inner masculine gets to like receive those like, I don't know, like I'm not telling you how to do things, but I'm also
Right.
showing you like and like inspiring this part of like, hey, like we could do it this way. So I love that the articles was really helpful because that would be a
Yeah.
lot of sense because you're like, oh, it's not, yeah, not just you that it's coming from. It's good.
Yeah, and we've had deep conversations about that where I've been like, this is how your family does it, this is how my family does it, and like I've stated I want to do it differently. And I think having that just like genuine open conversation of like what can we take, like what's the best parts of our family that we can take into our own family unit and what can we leave behind, and just like setting that container for the family.
Yeah. Because it's such a blend of like how both of like you have two wildly different people that were raised differently, and you get to mesh that together to create this new version and like you had said, new unit, which is kind of brings everybody on the same page of how you're like, okay, not fighting of like, well, this is how it was done. Then it's like, wait, we get to build something completely new that you guys can contribute to. Did he have like his own version or a similar kind of awakening that you had described with your Kundalini? Is he also in that kind of realm or in a different aware but not aware? Like
Yeah.
how did you communicate that to him as like your husband being like, I have all this energy? Was there any, what was about that?
I think 2020 was like the great awakener for a lot of people, and that was a big wake up for him to the world. We were very much like on the same page with that, but in terms of like spirituality and intuition, he would never be like, "Yeah, I'm super intuitive." Like he is such an analytical left brain, but he is super intuitive. And he's
Right.
really good at following his intuition, but he wouldn't say that out. So it's always kind of been like, yeah, that's Lindsay's thing, but he's totally open to listening to it. And he's not super interested in it outwardly, but I could see that shifting. Like he's definitely shifted the last few years. And I think for him, what's been eye-opening too is just some little things with our kids, which I know I touched on some of the stories. Like Kenzie, our middle, is so connected to the other side. And when she was 2 years old, she'd be like, Grandma's here. Grandma was in Florida. And she'd just start talking about grandma. And I'm like, both my grandmas are alive, and neither one of them have ever lived in Florida. And I didn't even know my husband's grandmother lived in Florida at the end of her life. I never met her. And so Kenzie would connect with his grandma. She'll connect with his grandfather who's passed on. So some of that has also been very like eye-opening for him, where it's like, oh, okay, what Lindsay's saying is, I guess this is, bigger than I
Right.
realized. This is a whole thing in
Right.
our family.
Oh my gosh, it's a completely different level of validation of like you're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, those kids can't make that shit up. Like
Right.
it's
Yeah,
just
she's
like
two. Like,
how would they know
yeah.
any of that? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay, because I love that. I love when you shared the personal stories in your podcast of like what would happen, all the kind of like weird stuff, which I would love to kind of tap more
Yeah.
into that because it's
Yeah.
like things, yeah, from this side is like, it's like reconnecting to the intuition, yes, and yourself, yes, and remembering your mission, yes. But it's like, it's so much also like reconnecting ourselves into like the magic of the world and the magic that like surrounds us. So I loved hearing like I think it was your youngest maybe with the fairies, or was it your youngest with
It was my
playing with their
middle
hair or
Kenzie, my
something? I love.
4-year-old.
Oh, your middle.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we live by this forest and it has the most incredible, like you said, magical energy. And I just know like all the fairies are around and the nature spirits, and you can just feel it when you're out there. And so Kenzie is always talking to, who knows, her guides, nature spirits. I don't know who she's talking to whenever we're outside. Not that long ago, she was telling me, the fairies keep waking me up. The fairies keep waking me up. And I was like, okay, I do not doubt this at all because I know we have a lot of fairies around us. But I said, just tell them you're not available to play at night. You can only play during the daytime. And she's like, okay. And then that night, I was checking on her at night and I was like pulling up her blanket and I looked by her head and there were like 5 or 6 just blue twinkling lights like flying around her head. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen like a physical fairy like that. It was so cool. But then I was also like, okay, fairies, we discussed this. No playing at
Right.
night. Kenzie needs sleep. But yeah, we
Yeah.
have, I mean, it seems like every week there's something new. Like my youngest Coco will talk to trees. And I think I told this story in the podcast where she'll just start babbling to trees. And this is like a new gift that I recently opened up as well. And I'm like, wow, hers is already turned on. Like, how cool is that? And we were in the forest one day and she was like babbling something, and then all of a sudden she looked at the tree and goes, I love you, and hugged it. And I was like, oh my God, I wish I had that on video. It was such a special moment. But yeah, there's always a new story at our house.
Amazing. The part I love how you kind of like you don't discount what I hear from like all these experiences. Like you don't discount what they see or what they know. And you don't tell them like, oh, this is like silly or, this it stop doing that or whatnot. But I do, so I see that, and I also see you like say that like you can create these boundaries. Like I love how you do like your energy clearing with them, like the setting boundaries with what you're being able to see. Because a lot of kids can see different things, and especially through different dimensions. And that's like a common thing because the veil's still so thin. Can you speak about just a little bit more about how you create those boundaries and what you're able to teach your kids that they can create those boundaries without shutting it down?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, last night, I was telling you before this, Kenzie had a bad dream and she woke up and I went in her room and we were laying there and I could see she was still really freaked out. And she goes, should we ask Archangel Michael to come? And I was like, yes, honey, I already called him in. He's right here. So I was like, thank you. Thank you for
Wow.
remembering that. But we call on Archangel Michael. I do every single morning and every single night, just like for my kids, for my house. I call on Source and I ask Source to fill the home and surround my kids and fill them with just white protective light and clear them of anything that's not serving, clear away any distortions or any energies that aren't serving our highest good. So I do that every day. And then I will call on Archangel Michael to just protect them, protect our home. And my kids and I will do like protection bubbles. Usually when we're like on the way to school, or if they forget, I'll just do it when they leave. And I'll be like, what color do you want to do today? And so we'll call on like a protection bubble. And then when we get home from any sort of crowded place, like yesterday they were at the pool and there were so many kids around, and so in the car we're just like, I release any energy I picked up that is not mine. I call back all of my power, all my energy to me now. And it's kind of like a little game for them now, but it really does make such a big difference. It makes a huge difference for me as an adult.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's just incredible to be able to teach your kids that so young. Because yeah, I didn't find that out until like my mid-20s, and you're like, that's like why I feel all these things, or I feel overwhelmed when I go here, or
Yeah.
I have these thoughts after watching this or whatever. And we take it all in as our own, especially as kids, like to be able to really from an early age be able to decipher, to be like, oh, that's not mine. And that is like so huge in the lesson of its own, where it's like, it can eliminate so many issues of thinking that all these thoughts and all these feelings are all of yours, when typically it's usually not. It's somebody around you, or the crowd, or even energies around you. That's just, I love that. And were they able to, like, how young did you start to do that? When they were, I guess, once you had your awakening, were they just really receptive to that? They understood when you kind of taught them younger?
Yeah, they've just kind of grown up with it. So they don't really know any
Yeah.
difference. Like they're like, oh,
Right.
mommy
Okay.
is, lavender cleansing or like Palo Santo cleansing the house again. Like I was telling a friend the other day, I go, when they finally have a sleepover at somebody else's house, or like start going to houses without me, they're going to realize, oh, mommy does things a lot different than some other people. But right now, they're just like, oh, this is normal. This is my mom. And, like my son was
Yeah.
telling me the other day, he's like, yeah, I was telling my friend about my third eye. And he said, we don't have a third eye. And I said, we do have a third eye. And I'm like, okay, we just need to understand that not everyone can see third eyes like you. And not everyone is going to believe the same things we believe in. So just, hold your belief, but also just know that this maybe isn't what your friend's going to be taught from his family. My son's starting to learn. He's
Yeah.
almost 7. He's kind of like starting to pick up on it. But Yeah, they're like,
Okay.
it's
Yeah,
just,
that was my second question of like, because there are so many people that like don't believe these things or aren't awakened to these things. And yeah, of like how has he been really receptive to be like, oh, okay, you don't know this, so we'll just move on. Like, because I know when as you start to get older, kids start to like compare and contrast, like, oh, my mom does this, or we do this, or we go here, and it starts to like compare kind of things like with each other to kind of see like what's going on. So I could see that happening like with other families or other kids to be like, oh, that's not true. Like, yeah, is it just kind of like it's okay, they can believe something else, but this is what you know to be true? Is that kind of like the route that you typically go?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I'm saying. I feel like at
Yeah.
this age, like he'll be in first grade, they're still in that mode where it's like somebody says something and they're just like, okay, cool. And they just brush it off, or they don't like internalize things that much yet. But I'm sure in the next few
Okay.
years, this is really going to shift. So I am super curious about that as well. But yeah, as of right now, he's just like, okay, that's what you believe. This is what I believe. And my son is very like strong in his convictions. So he's just like,
Mm.
okay, cool, shake it off.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I guess that's kind of not, yeah, and maybe once they get a little bit older. But I think when you have such it sounds like such a strong way of doing things for so long within like your household and the way that you guys do things. And that's what's so cool about like setting up the Starseed parenting from like the get-go, or when you're already awakened and you can incorporate this, it just becomes such a strong foundation for them as kids to like go out in the world and just have that kind of understanding. Yeah, so I really like that take. Okay, I want to tap into a little bit of your meditations. They are activations. I want to hear more about like your meditation process and when someone actually listens to your meditations, like what is going to happen when that.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of interesting messages. So I think it very much depends on the person and where they're at. But so in general, I will get a meditation idea, will drop in. And then whenever it's ready to be recorded, it'll just be like, I have to get this out of me. Like I'm birthing this meditation. And usually, sometimes I'll have like maybe a small outline. But whatever comes through comes through, and then I edit it accordingly. I always meditate myself beforehand and like, call in my highest guides, my highest self, all of that. But yeah, these are really activations from the divine, and as I'm channeling them, it's like again like a kundalini rising. My whole body is just like vibrating with all the energy, and that's how the first time I recorded one, I was like, whoa, okay, that's how I knew this was something different than just, creating a meditation, because my whole body, the energy that I was feeling and just like the love and the excitement and the joy from it, it was like nothing else. So yeah, so they come in and I record them, I edit them, and they're really, I've realized, transmissions that raise people's frequency and help open them up to divine guidance. And I was told, they shift people's frequency to 5D and like well beyond, depending where you're at. And it's also found that I've become like a soft space for people. They're often they're like gentle, but they're really powerful too, if that makes sense. And they're always uplifting. Like they're always going to leave you just feeling so good and so held and just so warm. I forget what else you asked me.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, they're very like powerful activations. And I
Yeah.
feel like when someone's just beginning on, and I guess that would be like a follow-up question would be like if a parent and not even parent, because like I've gotten so much out of your teachings and communicating with you and now this podcast to listen to of like, okay, I'm awake and aware, I'm a starseed, all these things, and how I do life differently is already happening. And so it's really extremely powerful and helpful for me to look to you and like parenting completely different to like prep myself in the future of like when I want to become a parent and a mom. So it's so helpful, even if you're not a parent, to listen to your podcast and listen to your teachings and meditations. And it also speaks to like my inner child of being a starseed. So I just kind of wanted to say that a little bit, that it's very powerful in that sense. But what would you say to a new parent, like, or right before maybe they just conceived or whatnot, like, would you give them any kind of breakdown of a toolkit of like, maybe you start with your meditations, maybe you do your own shadow work, like what's kind of like a couple things that you would like kind of help someone just begin this process? Or maybe they already have kids and they're like, wait, I think I'm a starseed. I think they're starseeds. I'm late to this process. What would you kind of guide them like to start, like, other than, of course, listening to your podcast, which is going to just be great.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say for me, I mean, probably the biggest game changer as a mom has been creating space to meditate almost every single day. There have been a few days I've missed, but I will say almost every single day I meditate. And I like to do it at the same time every day. I've timed it so that it's during my youngest nap and my other two's quiet time. And they know, like, this is mommy's meditation time. We don't bother her unless it's an emergency. And it's completely changed my life. I would say carve out specific time every day to meditate. And it doesn't have to be long. Sometimes I meditate for an hour, and sometimes it's only going to be like 5 or 10 minutes. Do what you can. There are times where I meditate in the car and I have the best meditations while I'm just like driving, or like taking a walk. You don't have to sit there. And I'm not the type where I can like sit in silence and just, I find that really boring. So like I like to go into it with either an intention to receive divine guidance, or maybe to clear and cleanse my energy, or to find more love for myself, or more love for another person. Just I like to go into it always with an intention as well. So I would say, yeah, if you can carve out time to meditate, that's a game changer. Breath work as a mom, especially once you have a toddler and you can do breath work with them, even just like 1 minute of breath work is, again, like such a game changer. So breath work, and then find your community. If you are pregnant, like find a group of other pregnant moms if you can. And for sure, once you're a new mom, it's so important to have that sense of community and just like the social aspect, because it can be so isolating when you're home with a little baby by yourself. Honestly, they don't give you that much in the beginning. They're not smiling for a few months. So it's a lot. You're like, I'm giving. I need something in return. And you can get that from other moms. And I found that motherhood is like this, it's like this club that you don't even know exists until you become a mom. And then you're like, whoa, this is so special. Like, you'll be at the playground with your kids and one of your kids falls down, but you're helping your other child. Another mom will just come up and like help your child, because that's what we do. Like, we're in this club now, So get excited for that. It's amazing. It's the best change of your life, but it's a lot. Yeah, I would say those are like my top things. And then also just, you have to make time for yourself. That was something my first year that I wasn't doing at all. And you can really lose yourself in motherhood if you're not doing that. And so I know I finally hired a sitter for like 2 mornings a week, and I would just go run errands by myself, or go work out, or go get coffee with a friend. And it completely like revitalized my energy for the rest of the week. So I knew moms that would do like babysitting swaps. Like if they couldn't afford to hire a sitter, they'd be like, hey, I'll watch your kids and then you watch mine, and they just flip back and forth. So there's always a way if you don't have family around. But yeah, self-care is huge. It's so important.
Wow. That is so smart to be able to like, it's taking that little extra time for yourself, like gives back so much to like you tenfold, and your family and your kids. So I wouldn't even think to like, swap and cause like both moms will need it. Like if you're in school and you have like, you're both strapped with all of your kids. So that's like a really nice exchange where you're like, okay, I'll take them all. And then you take them all. So that's even when I have my, I'm just on my own and I take some of those breaks for myself, or come back and do something for yourself, you feel so revitalized. So that would make sense that it would be, especially like for your kids, so beneficial. That is such a great toolkit to start. Like you should make that little bundle for people, but because you don't know as you go in, and it's really helpful to hear all those things, especially the same things where like especially as parents, you struggle with the same things, and then you're thinking that you're the only one that's like really struggling with like maybe personal time, and you're like, oh, it's a struggle for everybody. So it's helpful to hear to like, you could do this for yourself and be even better for your kids, which is just brilliant. And so as I think that would be helpful for people, is there anything that you recommend for, even beforehand, for those that like don't have kids like me? Is there any advice that you would give someone that would want kids, doesn't really know yet? What would you give them, any kind of advice or any kind of tools for their like future kids? Or is there anything different that you hadn't said yet? Because you've covered a lot of advice for that.
I would say it's common to really want to prepare. Like I know I read a bunch of books, but nothing can
Hmm.
really prepare you. It sounds really cliche, but it's true. And then you have your first kid and you think you nail it down, and you have your second and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this kid's completely different."
Start
So
from
like
scratch.
every
Okay.
yeah, you start all over. So every kid's totally different. I would say just get as connected to your intuition as possible. I think
Hmm.
that's really important is connecting to your body, get your body as healthy as possible, but also just like love your body. I have a friend who had multiple miscarriages, and she's like, I just don't understand what's going on. And I kind of like tapped in, and I was hearing like she just needs to send her body love. Like she's like berating her body and it's just not helping anything. So I sent her a meditation that I did on like self-love. And she's pregnant now. I'm not saying it's from my meditation, but she's like 6 months pregnant. But I told her, I was like, you need to like thank your body, and just like you
Yeah.
are, you are one with your body, and just really make it a priority to nourish your body, not just physically, but also like mentally and emotionally. So I would say that, but yeah, expect the unexpected and be prepared in a sense, but and hire or have your family come help you in the beginning because it is a lot. So you can really just focus on the baby and they can take care of everything else. But yeah, I would say there's not a whole lot that can prepare you. Just try to be your highest, brightest self beforehand.
Okay, that's good. That's good advice. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I will link all of your information, your website, meditationmama.com, and her Instagram and her podcast in the show notes. And so you can get all of that good stuff and follow that. It's just, I already absolutely love it. Can't wait to do more of your meditations. And yeah, before we kind of wrap up, anything else you'd like to share for anyone that would be helpful for their Starseed kids, or anything that is just kind of in your brain that you want to share with us?
I think the only other thing I want to share is I would love to eventually create a Starseed parenting community. So anyone who is interested in that, please message me, reach out to me. I think just like being a new mom, or motherhood needs a community, I think we need a Starseed parenting community. I think that would be really beautiful. So I'm throwing that out there now. I don't know when it will come to fruition, but yeah, reach out to me and I would love to hear from you.